today we've got two fairly straightforward questions. They're not that straightforward in terms of answers, but in terms of the ask. So the first one of those is really, we're looking at agriculture today, as you can guess by the panel. We're asking what contribution have insurers made to the African agricultural sector since the introduction of parametric solutions? So we really want to talk about parametric solutions in particular. And this could either be specific to a company, I'm sure Lesley's going to have quite a lot to say about that, or to the sector as a whole. And I'm sure, again, you'll all have quite a lot to say about that. Simba, would you like to start us off with just a general introduction, and then we can go into answering that question?
Thank you, Liz. More importantly, I would like to thank our panelists today. We've sacrificed time to be on this discussion, a very important discussion impacting Africa at large and, of course, the whole world. We really appreciate your time. And just to go into the topic, I think it is really very critical. One of the things that you find through literature, if you read on climate change and agriculture, is that compared to all the other sectors of industry, agriculture is the one that is most sensitive to climate and weather changes, and hence it requires that much of attention. More critically, Africa, if you look at the African continent, most of our economies are heavily dependent on agriculture and agricultural activities, and also even the manufacturing industry, most of them are also agricultural based in terms of food processing, food exportation, and so forth. And so I think it is very critical for us to put that into context and actually just highlight that the climate change is not just maybe one of those topics to discuss around the TV and so forth, but it is actually very critical and central to the survival and sustainability of the future of African economies. And so I just thought we put that into context just so that we all appreciate even the people who are following this discussion to actually understanding the importance of this discussion to the insurance industry, to our communities, industry, government, and everyone included, just to understand how important this matter is to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Simba. So, Lesley, I don't know if we should turn to you first in terms of parametrics, because obviously this is something near and dear to your heart. But, you know, how do you think that the market has been changing since the introduction of this kind of innovation?
So parametric insurance has emerged as a critical component of the overall climate disaster risk financing and insurance space. It plays a vital role in protecting farmers from the impact of climate change. On the African continent, we have seen an increase in frequency and severity of weather-related disasters. Insurance is important on a number of aspects. Firstly, we can talk about the most obvious one, which is around the resilience of supply chains, such that when there is a shock, farmers have the financial means to be able to commence their activities and relaunch themselves. The second and less obvious aspect of it is related to the de-risking of investments into agriculture. Banks have developed a great deal of expertise in assessing credit risk, but they do not want to take on climate-related risk because this is not their business model. On the other hand, as the insurance industry, we have expertise in underwriting and taking on climate-related risks. Therefore, we are able to insure banks when they lend into the agricultural sector regarding the exposure that they have to climate-related risks. And this enables much greater fund flow into the agricultural sector, lowers the cost of capital, and enables farmers to invest much more in increasing the productivity of their farms. In my experience now at the African Risk Capacity, we've been rolling out parametric insurance programs in Africa over the past 10 years. we have paid out $230 million in claims, and we have emerged as a trusted partner in Africa. And we believe that this is important for the wide-scale adoption and utilization of parametric insurance.
Thank you very much indeed, Lesley. I mean, it's interesting that you've been in the market for 10 years and you've seen that change in that time. If Evance, you come from very much the traditional reinsurance market side of things. Have you also seen a sea change in the approach? And I'm particularly interested in what Lesley was saying about the way that it's enabling capital to flow into the sector as well. Have you seen that in perhaps in those past 10 years as well?
Yeah, I would say parametric has really contributed to this change, like Lesley has put it. First, with the traditional products, we used to struggle reaching out to these farmers. They're deep in the rural areas with no roads. Some of them are illiterate, language barriers in areas where you're not conversant with the local language. So it was a bit difficult to reach out. But then with parametric, taking advantage of technology, we're able to give insurance to these farmers, irrespective of those challenges of reaching out to them in their local areas. And we've seen this leading to the narrowing of the coverage gap or insurance gap to these farmers. And we've seen a lot of growing in numbers of millions of farmers getting insurance. And all this is due to the innovations of parametric insurance. With more farmers being insured, and as Lesley has put it, financial literacy is also coming in. And this has given them a lot of impact and at their personal level, some growth. The banks are able to trust them, they're able to borrow loans, they're able to have timely inputs. And I would say that with parametric innovations, a lot is happening around climate and disaster risk management. At Continental Re, we've seen that, products are coming in, a lot of innovations needs to be done. So at Continental Re, we are also looking at now trying other new products, and we're looking at more of soil moisture index, because people are used to area yield and weather index, but then there is time to get into more of innovation products that will probably be more precise and will give more clear proxies to the loss. Yeah.
Thank you. And Isaac, if you are able to speak to us and put your camera on now, would you agree with that, or have you had a different experience with ZEPRI?
I actually agree with what has been said, and actually to add to what has been said, one thing that parametric insurance has also done is unlocked opportunities for delivering other services that ordinarily would not have been delivered to the smallholder farmers. I'm talking of, first of all, access to credit. I'm talking of other insurance, other financial services such as savings, access to other life products, or non-parametric products such as medical insurance or medical aid. So it has opened up an opportunity for these other products to be offered alongside parametric insurance as well. Much has been said about the credit bit, but that for me is I think is a major winner, because access to credit just broadens opportunities for our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Junior, if I can bring you in here too as well. Do you think that there's regional variation? Obviously, with your former roles, you've been very much Pan-Africa, have very much Pan-African interests. So, do you see areas where this has been done a lot? I'm thinking of places like Senegal, where there was a lot of projects that were kind of piloted in the country, but then maybe not so much in somewhere like Ghana, where you don't hear of it so much? Or is that actually, have these solutions become Africa-wide now, do you think?
I wouldn't say it is continent-wide. You do find the products in all the regions, but certainly not in all the countries. And the reason is, in my view, is fairly simple. If you look at agricultural production itself, if we go back to the basic production across the continent, and now I'm talking about large-scale commercial farming, you don't find this in all countries. Certainly not in the form of organized agriculture that you'd find in a place like South Africa, maybe Namibia, to some extent Zimbabwe as well. This level of production thins out as you go further and further north and west in the continent. Then you start to see more small-scale commercial farmers. You start to see more what we call communal types of farming, and their needs are different. Because if you talk of pure agricultural insurance in the commercial sense, you're talking of large units, where as a crop insurance underwriter, you're actually dealing with each farmer and his policy and his crop individually at the underwriting stage. If they have a loss, you are talking of actually going to that farm and carrying out physically a loss assessment and adjustment process on the ground, normally together with the farmer. This is not possible in the small scale to communal, or if one uses the common word, peasant farming, because of the large numbers and accessibility. So parametric insurance has become a workaround to overcome these challenges of large numbers of not easily accessible farmers. That is the background to parametric. And then in addition to it, quite a few of the programs are not funded by the farmers themselves. There's either an behind it, or it's a government program behind it. So it becomes part of a government's effort to support these emerging farmers or the communal farmer. And it's not unique to Africa. You see it in India, for example. The society there is very much sensitive to being in debt. If you read the history of crop insurance in India, when farmers found themselves in a heavily indebted situation, they would even commit suicide out of embarrassment. So the government introduced crop insurance, but it is heavily supported and subsidized by the government, just to provide that support, social support to the farmer. But also remember, there is a political angle to supporting farmers, because in many instances they are the majority in the population. So if you're a politician or a government in force, in power, you want to keep this voter base happy. But it also brings in another angle. If you have a loss and it doesn't trigger a loss on your parametric program, you immediately have a political problem, because the government will say, but there's a loss. You say, no, it didn't trigger. Then you have a long discussion. I don't know whether it's happened on the continent, but I've certainly seen it happen in other countries, where it becomes a highly political matter, because the farmers on the ground are screaming, we've lost our crop. It hasn't triggered on the parametric and it's not payable. Then you, as the insurer, face pressure. So that's how I look at it, Liz. It's a necessary social support mechanism in many countries, and it's a workaround to your traditional commercial farming crop insurance products. That would be my comment.
Thank you. Israel, you're coming from Mozambique. Are parametric solutions readily available for a country like Mozambique?
Thank you, Liz, for the question. And what I've just done is that I've just quickly put into the chat 3 dates that I can use just to respond to your question, Liz. The first one is 2011. So everything we've been discussing so far with Simba, Junior, Lesley, and Evance, this whole idea, Liz, you're asking about parametric insurance, it has all been born out of a conference that happened in Maya Riviera in 2011, where global financial leadership arrived at the conclusion that without financial inclusion, territories like Africa will not achieve development. And on the back of the resolutions of this specific conference, Liz, Holland Mozambique is part of the first generation of markets to prototype the model. So in 2012, literally a year after Liz, after this meeting, and after the Maya Declaration, which says, Mozambique, if you want development, you're not going to achieve it by chasing the big companies. You will achieve it by the small scale producers that Junior was speaking about. So in 2012, we piloted index insurance, and that pilot that we did, Liz, in the first year of testing this technology that Lesley and Evance were talking about, we were covering 40,000 smallholder cotton producers. And in the same year, Liz, of piloting it, we had a big loss. We had a loss ratio of 270%. I am actually not aware, and Evance, as the reinsurer, you can always correct me. I'm not aware of a pilot. First year, you get massive claim. So the government that had sponsored this and the World Bank that wanted to see this, Lesley, they saw it working. So for every $1 of premium that we received, and the premium was $100,000, we paid out $270,000. We were worried, obviously, with this claims impact. We're experimenting, it's the first year, and there is a huge claim. But Lesley and Simba, you're not going to believe this. The next season, despite having paid this massive claim of nearly 3 times the amount of premium that had been sponsored by the World Bank, the policy was not renewed. We failed to renew it. Why? We go to the government. We say, you have seen this work. You have seen the farmers getting $3 for every $1 of premium. Please, let's do this. They said, we don't have the budget. We go to the World Bank. You sponsored the pilot. This pilot in Mozambique, I am not aware of any other pilot list that has worked to the same extent. Let's do one more year. Sorry, we don't believe in subsidies, and we only supported you to get started. Now the market must provide. We go to the farmers. The farmers say, hey, Muchena, we are planting now in December. Every time when we are planting, our cotton buyers, Olam and Sanam, these were the 2 cotton buyers that were involved, they give us inputs for free. And after they've given us inputs for free, we then give them the produce in July, and then they deduct their upfront costs as they pay us for our produce. So sorry, Mr. Muchena, we would love to pay you, but we're not going to pay you. And there is a fantastic study, Liz, that was done by CGAP that says these same smallholder farmers that Junior was speaking about, in December, January, when risk is supposed to incept, they are going through what CGAP defined as the hunger period. In other words, everything that they planted, they've eaten or sold. By the time it's December, January, they have no cash from a cash flow point of view. So how do you implement insurance in the smallholder farmers when they don't have funds? And this is where I agree with our veteran, Junior Ngulube, that look, there have to be some social government interventions. There has to be an element of social assistance. And that's why the few successes, Liz, of what you're asking about would be in countries like Kenya, Nigeria, as well as Zambia, because you have what are called macro projects where the government has said, like in Zambia, we're going to insure 1 million smallholder farmers and we will subsidize insurance, area yield in the case of Zambia, fertilizer and seeds. So I am from that school of thinking as well that says the smallholder farmer faces so many challenges. To expect them to buy is a huge challenge. So the brief answer, and I'm sorry for the elongated explanation, is that there is a need for this product, and that's the third link which I've put in my chat referring to a German Watch report that identifies that Mozambique is one of the most highly exposed and vulnerable countries to extreme climatic events. So the risk is there and it's real and it's getting worse. We have to find mechanisms to protect them. Unfortunately, at this stage, the insurance sector struggles with how to access smallholder farmers. Lesley, as well as Junior, spoke about access to finance. In Mozambique, the lending from the commercial banking sector, only 3% goes to agriculture. So banks don't have an appetite. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a really interesting explanation, but it's also raised a lot of questions, hasn't it? And one of my questions was that we talk about parametrics as if it's one thing, and actually, of course, you're dealing often with these smallholder farmers where the projects are quite small and quite narrowly targeted. So you're dealing with, for example, your cotton farmers in Mozambique or your sugar farmers in Zanzibar or something, but you're picking quite a small group of people that you're insuring on these projects. And I'm wondering, Lesley, whether within the evolution that you've seen in your last decade, whether you've seen an evolution to being able to offer these solutions on a more broad base, so that perhaps you move away from that idea that you have those triple claims, sort of that your loss ratio just becomes so horrible because you get these massive claims in early on in these projects. Is there any way that you're able to kind of spread the risk across different departments? Is that how it works now?
So one of the core tenets of insurance is that insurance is based on scale and diversification of risk. So the advantage that we have at the African Risk Capacity is that we operate on a continent-wide basis, even though there is always extreme climate events every year on the African continent. They are not happening in each and every country at the same time, meaning that we can use the premiums of the many to pay for the claims of the few. So what is required to cover the continent, because the problem that we face is at the scale of the continent, is a much greater adoption of insurance. As Israel was pointing out, the insurance penetration is still quite low vis-a-vis the risks that the farmers face. I would also like to spend just a little bit of time talking about the structure of the parametric insurance products that we are offering. We are big proponents of parametric insurance because, firstly, they are easy to scale up. I don't need to have been to a village in Mali to create an insurance program. As long as we have access to the data, we can structure an insurance program. So we can, from using a relatively small team, create insurance programs all over the continent, and it's very easy to scale up. The second advantage is around the speed of payouts, because we are not doing actual loss assessment. We are modeling what the impact of the loss would be. It's therefore very easy to figure out what the size of the claim is based on the data that we have received. Also, there is improved transparency, because anyone can go online, download the satellite data, and see in real time the data that we are looking at. So it's easy for the farmers or for the insureds or the cedents to create what the size of the loss should be. However, as was indicated by Junior, the major downside of parametric insurance is around basis risk, and the basis risk can be both perceived basis risk and actual basis risk. What we mean by perceived basis risk is that the model correctly calibrates the severity of a drought, but the client believes that they're entitled to the payment of a claim, because we are not covering the first dollar of loss of a drought, but the client has a retention, and we only cover droughts that are beyond a certain level of severity. So if you have a drought nonetheless, which is below the severity covered by insurance, then the client starts to believe that they are entitled to the payment of a claim. Or in some instances, you are covering an entire country. However, there is a severe drought in only one part of the country, which is offset by a normal rainy season in a different part of the country. And the inhabitants of that particular part of the country that has experienced a drought start to believe that they should be entitled to the payment of a claim. Then there are also then instances of actual basis risk, whereby the model, for whatever reason, is unable to detect the payment of the existence of a drought, and then you are unable to pay a claim. Obviously, there are scenarios where the model indicates that a claim should be paid even though there is no drought. But as you can imagine, clients and cedents are not very keen to talk about this specific incidents, and it becomes a public relations nightmare to refuse to pay a claim if the model is indicating that you should be paying a claim. However, it's also then important to point out that it's not all doom and gloom, because there are significant improvements that are happening in the area of data. So just to illustrate this with a few examples, a few companies have launched low orbit satellites. SpaceX is facilitating this, which have a much better resolution and give more granular data, thereby dealing more effectively with the issues related to basis risk. And then the existence of data is often a chicken and egg problem, in the sense that there won't be good data if there are not enough users of that data. So as parametric insurance becomes more widely adopted, the number of users is increasing. I know in our case, we give data providers feedback on the quality of the data, and this prompts them to improve the data that they are getting. And then also people are starting to become more conversant with the way parametric insurance works, the issues related to the attachment point averaging out. So we start to have fewer incidents of perceived basis risk. However, it's not, the battle is not won yet, because there's still a lot more education that needs to be done. But as an eternal optimist, I believe that things are moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lesley. Isaac, I wonder if I could ask you, because I know ZEPRI has its Drive project that it's working on. I wonder how much of this conversation you kind of agree with, and is a challenge for the company as well with the livestock in the kind of northeast of Africa. Is that something that tallies with you?
I mean, there are a number of challenges that come with, underwriting parametric products. But in my opinion, I think most of them stem from the distribution side of things, because quite a lot of advancements have been made, on the design side, on the product design side. There have been improvements in data. There have been improvements in modeling techniques for the products themselves. As ZEPRI, we do work with quite a number of scientists across the globe to design and refine the design of several products that we do to help reduce, incidences of basis risk. But one major way of combating basis risk is ground validation. You need the model to be appropriate for the farmers' experiences on the ground, and without that corresponding data for validation, it becomes hard to come up with a model that really reflects the farmers' experiences. So on the data side, I think the biggest challenge is ground validation and the cost associated with conducting such an exercise. Basically, ground validation requires exercises or rather surveys that interface with the farmers so that you can learn the farmers' experiences and model your products according to what the farmer experiences. So that data for me is what is missing. The other piece of data that is quite hard to get and quite critical for product design is yield data at the farmer level. Or if you're talking about livestock, you would want to understand mortality issues, disease prevalence, and all that. So you find that most of the times when we go to the ground, either this data is not there, and if it's there, it's not adequate enough to allow you to model your risk appropriately. So those are some of the challenges that we have. And then earlier I had mentioned that another challenge that we do face is on distribution. It's quite hard to sell or distribute parametric products to farmers if they're not properly aggregated. And this is where governments and other institutions that offer an aggregation platform come in handy. So yeah, those are pretty much snippets about some of the challenges that we face. But nonetheless, that does not discourage us from innovating around these problems to try and make sure that we deliver products that speak to the farmers' experiences as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Evance, I will bring you back in here if I can. I mean, one of our other question was really about what action plans are being implemented to close the knowledge gap of small scale to medium farmers. And it's something that Israel touched on earlier as well. Basically, you pay them out, you pay the claim, you honor the claim, and then they don't want to renew because they can get the money for free, free from some kind of agency. How much can insurers do to change the dial on this conversation? How can you educate the farmers to be kind of more self-sufficient financially?
A lot has been done, Liz, and it's good hearing how my colleagues are putting it. Israel, Lesley, Isaac. A lot has been done, but we also have a lot of grounds to cover. Like I had put it earlier, these farmers are in the rural, there is language barrier, a lot of challenges reaching out to them. So some of the ways that can be worked on is getting local, we call them VIP, village insurance promoters, put them in a room, train them, and make sure they clearly understand this. And it's them who will take it back to the village. Remember, these farmers work on trust, most of them. So if one of them, maybe opinion shapers, local primary school teachers, chiefs, religious leaders, accept or understand the model and are able to translate to them in their local dialect, that works very well. And we've seen it work very well here in Kenya, in Nigeria, and little bit of Tanzania. And we feel a lot of this needs to be done. It's very expensive, and putting these people in a room, say for a week, their travels, their accommodation, it's quite expensive, but the impact is huge. The adoption rate, after they understand, after they get it direct from their leaders at the local level, is just amazing. Secondly, we also need to incorporate in technology here, because we're in an era of mobile phones. People are trying to get into tech space. So we can develop mobile games or videos that speak this information out there. So then at the comfort zones, they can look at it, interact with the games, and see how the insurance works in a like a game kind of setting. Also, as part of this, our leadership, the political leaders, also need to get to understand this and embrace it, and this be part of their mandate and what they speak to the people in their forums, in their policy development, and all that. And if they keep repeating this, then the importance of insurance will be embraced. Lastly, the slow adoption sometimes is due to lack of proper enrollment structures. We are used to a situation where farmers have to fill a form manually, forward it to the local, maybe collection point, chiefs and all that. Then this is relayed to the insurance company. So to cut this short, we need to do more in terms of mobile application developments, where farmers just click links and are able to enroll. So enrollment via technology is another space that we need to work on. Here in Kenya, we tried it with the livestock farmers, where farmers would go to their nearest point of enrollment. All this is put in a tablet and relayed to the central or underwriting company systems, and just like that they enrolled. But then because of them not having a lot of mobile, smartphones, they mostly use feature phones, then this wasn't very well pushed. But then now, because years are going where we're getting a lot of traction in terms of mobile or other communication companies, mobile communication companies are also trying to push the cheaper, affordable mobile products, then we should be able to take advantage of that and develop more of these channels for farmers to enroll. Lastly, we also need to make sure that insurance companies, because like you see in Africa, there are so many insurance companies, but very few are bold and are able to take on agricultural insurance and climate related risks. So, and not because that they don't want, but there is a perception that needs to be killed or get cleared. The perception is agri is very risky, and most insurance companies feel they'll burn their fingers. But this is because they're coming from a point of not knowing maybe how the products works, how to underwrite it. So we as reinsurers, we're also trying our level best to bring all these insurance companies on the table, take them through how these products works and best practices on which they can transfer to their clients. So I feel with those few efforts, a lot is still being done, a lot still needs to be done. And if we go that route, I think we will try expand the reach out and the impact that we believe agriculture insurance needs to achieve.
Thank you very much, Evance. Simba, you were nodding a lot as Evance was talking. Do you want to add anything in there?
Yes, I think just to follow through, I think what Evance, Lesley have said, I think we need to invest more into simplifying all these solutions we're talking about, if I can simplify it that way. I think you can tell with the passion that we are putting it across, but a lot of complicated words, a lot of complicated structures, and the paradox is we are trying to design parametric solutions for the small to medium farmers who happen to be on the lower side of sophistication as far as mostly education is concerned, as far as technology is concerned. And so I think as we are building up these technology solutions, I think we need to focus more on simplifying the solutions for the farmers, simplifying the technologies also. I mean, we have to translate this satellite technology and all those solutions to a language that a villager has to understand. And coupled with that, we need to invest more into education and training. And I think we need to get to a situation where, as put across by Israel here, the farmers, the politicians, they have to realize that this is a problem which they have to be part of in terms of solutions. At the moment, we have a situation where we are throwing money at the problem. But I think we need to get to a situation where the farmers actually have to understand the core of climate change itself, to the extent that they have to become part of the climate action. They have to become part of the solution over and above the financial solutions that we are bringing on board. If I can bring in one dimension also, one of the issues that you see in Africa is that Africa is so diverse. So when we talk of climate change in Mozambique, you are talking of extreme weather in terms of cyclones, excessive rain, and so forth. You move to other regions, climate change might actually be meaning drought. You move to another region, climate change might be meaning, I mean, maybe impact in terms of pest or insecticides and so forth. And I think our message and solutions to the African continent also has to recognize that. And we customize messages according to what exactly is transpiring in this region. Is it a drought region? Is it excessive rain? Is it extreme weather? What form of extreme weather is occurring in there? And part of the solutions also have to come with alternative crops, because I think we get so much of the message that climate change is causing so much destruction and we have to throw in money to the problem. But there are some suitable crops that can come across to dilute that situation. And I'll give you one very good example. The markets have done so well, for example, in markets like Zimbabwe, where when I was growing up, there used to be a lot of cotton farming. And because for some reason, the market for cotton, decided that the prices were not going to be so high, you then found a natural gravitation to other crops. And I think part of our message, even as the insurance industry, is not to say, keep planting the same crop so that when you have a loss from climate change, we pay. But we also need to invest as the insurance industry to say, the climate change, this is what is happening. In terms of long-term sustainability, what crops are our farmers supposed to divert to make sure that in as much as we are supporting, we can actually end up having the type of agriculture which is compatible with the kind of climate that we're having now.
I don't know if any of you've flown across Algeria recently, but I was on a flight coming over Algeria, and the pilots, actually I was very lucky to be up in the cockpit, and the pilots said, look what's happening here, and it's going green, which is very bizarre because you wouldn't think it because it's a Saharan country, but they're getting great swathes of green emerging across, and that's climate change as well. So it's not always entirely negative. But Lesley, final question for you, but we are kind of running out of time already, unbelievably, always goes so quickly. But I'm wondering, we're talking about educating the farmers a lot. What about education of governments, which again is something that Israel touched on, that the government wasn't willing to pay the premium a second year running because it hadn't got the budget. How important is it to have that conversation at the highest level as well?
Given the fact that climate change touches everyone, it's important to engage at all levels. At the African Risk Capacity, we found that the government is very often the most complicated entry point on one hand, but also the most impactful, just given the scale and the reach and convening power of the government. We like to use the term government, but as you know, it describes various functions. So if you look at, say, at the ministerial level, you need to engage with the Ministry of Finance because they understand what the financial shortfalls would be in the event of a climate disaster. But you also have to engage with, say, the Ministry of Agriculture because they have the expertise when it comes to forecasting and understanding crop yields. You have to engage with the Ministry of the Interior because they are usually responsible for mounting any disaster relief efforts. You have to engage with the Ministry of Environment because they have the technical expertise when it comes to meteorological agencies. So as you can see, it's about building a coalition of stakeholders. And in some instances, you are engaging with colleagues that ordinarily don't speak to each other. So you have to find a way of convening and speaking to all of them, because without that, then you never have the full picture within the country. And of course, as has been mentioned, then you have to also include the farmers themselves in the insurance industry, the insurance regulators, in some instances, the insurance market itself. But this level of complexity is to be expected, given also the complexity of the challenge that we have from the impact of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. We have literally 2 minutes left. I don't know if anybody else would like to come in. Junior, Isaac, would you like to come in and just kind of wrap this conversation up? What are your final thoughts? Junior, do you want to do that?
Yes. I think it's been a very informative conversation, Liz. And for me, the key takeaway is the challenges that are involved in addressing the exposure the small-scale peasant farmer faces. It is complicated, it can be political. So one needs to create, even if it's technological solutions, that are one, effective, and secondly, translatable to a language that the farmer can understand what they are getting into. But as a closing remark, I would also say that there are many things that need to happen to support agriculture before insurance can play its role. It cannot be insurance alone that addresses the challenges. Insurance should be part of a package to help farmers. For example, agricultural extension in terms of offering advice. One of the backbones of the success of small-scale peasant farming in Zimbabwe is because there's an extensive and functional extension service that offers technical advice to farmers. A farmer is never more than 10 kilometers away from an extension worker. And this is one of the reasons this sector has been successful over the years.
Thank you very much indeed. As Simba said, thank you all very much for joining the conversation, and thank you to Simba for enabling it. We will be in touch again in the next few weeks, and you will be producing an article on this. So thank you all very, very much indeed. I really do appreciate your time.